Hi, everybody. Welcome to week two. Today we are going to be doing three lectures. The first one is going to be all about the CAD user interface and file setup. Excuse me. The second lecture is going to be about all things drawing and your basic drawing commands. So what I've included in this package of lectures is this handout. And we're going to be going through all of these commands, the ones that you're seeing on the screen here. I'll break this up into two lectures, so that'll be lectures 2 and 3. But before we get to this basic drawing modification and navigation, we're going to start with user interface. How do we just even open the program of CAD and get started? And then basic file setup. And the purpose behind file setup is that there's a lot of options in CAD for you to sort of curate the environment that you're working in and make it work just for you. And someone else might have different preferences. I want to make it so that you and I are always kind of in the same world, the same environment, so that when I say, hey, do this, you can find everything you need. And likewise, when you say, hey, I'm having trouble here, I know exactly what you're talking about. So let's just start with user interface and file setup. So I'm going to fire up CAD. So you can do that by using any sort of shortcut buttons you may have. I have one on the bottom of my screen here. You can do this by accessing the remote desktop through the Madison College, or if you, like I said, if you got the program right on your computer. So I have it right on mine, so I'm just going to go ahead, hit that button. Autodesk AutoCAD 2020 starts up. This is the program we're going to be working off. AutoCAD 2020, there's been some questions about that, but this is definitely the one that you want to download or use. So first thing you'll notice is it kind of takes you to this Start tab. So if you look right here, I've got that little circle helping you see what I'm seeing. That's the Start tab. Usually when you open up CAD, this is the first thing you'll see. You don't always have to go through this. You don't always have to say Open CAD and then go to your file. You can just double click on a file and it will open up CAD right to that file too. So, but we're just opening up CAD, seeing what we got. So what I'm seeing here is a sort of mini toolbar over here up on the top. I've got this big A with a down arrow. I've got sort of this big ribbon going across. And then I've got this kind of start page. So I'll get to the things over, like the toolbars and things. We'll get to that. But one thing I want to point out is you can see up in the right-hand corner, it says KKinney4. So that means I'm logged into my Autodesk account. You can do that over here if you like. Basically, that gives you access to Autodesk's online features. I just happen to always be logged into that. Do you need to log in for the purposes of this class or this lecture? No, you don't. So you can leave that or you can log in with your Autodesk account. If you're asking me, hey, Kevin, what is an Autodesk account? So in some of my previous posts, I talked about an Autodesk account and that you actually need that to download any of their free software. So that's in the syllabus. So if you're wondering about anything Autodesk account, go to the syllabus and you can do all that. So the other big things I want to point out on the screen here are what's in this start kind of area, start tab. First, it says get started, start drawing, and then it says recent documents. So the recent documents that I have open this week were my brother's basement. So I'm working on my brother's basement. And I also have AutoCAD Drawing Practice 1. So that's going to be your first assignment. So I was looking over that assignment. So I could click on that and go right to those files because I had those open already. Or let's just start with our own file. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Start Drawing. Now, 1 second before you do that, it says templates right here. I'm going to hit that down arrow. Now, there's a lot of different templates that you can sort of use to get started in AutoCAD. For this class, we're always going to use acad.dwt. Mine's already set to that. When you start this up, it'll probably already be set to that. So let's keep it on that and just click Start Drawing. Okay, so here's the world that opens up to us. Now, you may not have properties here on the left-hand side of the screen. See this box here? I have that open. What I'm going to do is just close that so you and I are perhaps looking at the same world. So here we go. We are in our own drawing here. So right away you can see at the very top center of the screen, it says Autodesk AutoCAD 2020 Educational Version Drawing1.dwg. So it says Drawing1, that's the name of our file. I haven't saved it yet. I haven't done anything to this yet. Okay, so if I save it, this will change here. In fact, let's save it right away. That would be a good place to start. So I'm going to go up to the big A over here, and I'm going to say Save As. And I'm going to go and save this right to the desktop I'm working on under, say, Fall 2020. I'm going to go to ARC Software 1, Week 2, and I'm just going to call this, put this in here, and I'm going to call this User in, and I'm going to hit Save. Okay, now if you look up at the top now, it shows the path and the file name. User interface. So that's what this lecture is. We're just trying to learn about what is it. Let's get our bearings here. What do I have to concern myself with? What do I not have to? And because there's a lot here we can ignore and we don't want to get overwhelmed. So I can still see that I have that Start tab over here. And here's my new file that I just created. I can always go back to that Start tab, and I can always go back to the user interface file that I just saved. So no matter how many files I have open, they'll all appear in tabs up here, and I can click between those. I can do that using Control Tab, or I can click on them here. Okay, so let's just start at the very top. I already took you through that giant A for AutoCAD button. So if I click on that down arrow, I got all kinds of options to do certain things in here. Make a new file, open a file, save as a file. Here are some of my recent documents. Okay. If I click on, right now, this area to the right is set on recent documents, but I can also click over here on open documents. So the file that I currently have open is user interface. That's the one I'm on. Okay. So if I had other files open, they would appear here, and they would also appear in tabs here. Okay. So that's what the A is for, sort of kind of your bigger file needs. New, open, save, kind of like, say, Microsoft Word. Like if you're used to that program where you go to save a file, start a new file, that's where you're going to find that in the big A. It's kind of the application menu. This little toolbar up here is kind of called like for quick access of certain tools. So those tools are simple things like saving, opening, making a new file, much like what's in the application file here, or menu rather here. So this little toolbar up here, circle in there, that's called your quick access toolbar. It'll be the same in Revit, also known as the QAT, quick access toolbar. What a cute name. Okay, moving down, we have a ribbon, right? Right now, this is the home tab, and here's the ribbon for the home tab. And there's different panels along the home tab. These panels are Draw, modify, annotation, and so on. So a lot of times I'll say, go to the Home tab, go to the Draw panel, and click on the Line tool. Or let's just type in the Line tool, whatever the case may be. Okay, so this is basically where most of your tools, if not all, will live. You'll access them through this ribbon, or you'll access the different tools of AutoCAD through just typing in the commands. Get to that in a second. So primarily for this class, you're going to be living in the Home tab. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of other tabs here. Let me close my email so we don't hear that anymore. There we go. There's a lot of other tabs here, but we'll primarily be living in the Home tab. We're going to just get to know all the different tools in this tab. Okay, let's kind of work our way down into the space. So as I pointed out before, we have these tabs here to show you sort of what files you have open. We have just the typical AutoCAD start menu to start with. Not necessarily a file, but it'll help you get started. And then we have the file we created, the user interface. If I make another file, I could do it right here by hitting the plus. Or I could go up to here in the quick access toolbar and hit new. Or I could go into the A and hit new. All that would create a new drawing for me. I just want to work in this user interface, so I'm not going to start a new one. Okay, so then we have this open space. Okay, so that giant open space where you're seeing like a grid in there, that is basically limitless into infinity digital space where we can place and make our drawing. Your drawing can live anywhere in this space, okay? But there is a coordinate system associated with this, so it's not like arbitrary where you put things. One thing you'll see is this little X and Y down in the corner here. So one way to navigate in this open space is by pushing down your third mouse button, which is also the wheel. So I have my left click, right click, and then I have my scroll, and then I also have ability to push this button down. And I'm sure your mice that you're using have the same features, but that is also a button. So if I push down the third mouse button or the scroll wheel, I see that little hand. There we go. And I can pan and move around. Okay. If I just use the scroll wheel, I can go in and out in this three-dimensional space. Now I say three-dimensional, but how we're going to use CAD this semester, primarily two-dimensional. Okay, so we're only going to be looking sort of down at our drawings and straight down on our drawings. We're not going to be angled looking at them. We're not going to be moving around in three-dimensional space. We're just going to be looking at our two-dimensional flat drawings. And that's what we're drawing in this space. The way to sort of make sure that I'm looking straight down on the drawing is this little navigation bar wheel over here should say top. That's what we want. We want to just look down on it from the top view. For the purposes of this class, we won't get into this navigation wheel just yet. We will use it a lot in Revit though. So that third mountain view, what did I say? Mountain view? That's weird. That third mouse button. There we go. I was getting my words mixed up. Will help us pan. It'll also help us scroll in and out. Now you see that XY there that I pointed out earlier. That's basically our 0, 0. Okay, so that is 0, 0 on the XY plane. Z is coming out at us. Okay. Okay, so that is our two-dimensional, well, technically three, but for our purposes, two-dimensional infinite space. Now, below that, we have what's called the command line right here. Now, this command line we can type in any command, or we can go and use the quick buttons up here. For the purposes of this class, we'll do both. I'll show you where the button is, but I'll also show you the command. Let me give you an example. Line. I'm going to click on line, and I'm just going to click around. Look at that. Made some lines. Okay. I'm done making lines. I'm going to hit escape. Boom. I'm done making lines. Okay. We're going to get more into these commands in my next lecture. But I could also, now I don't have to put my cursor down here. I can just type L for line. Now, if you look around my mouse right now, it says line. You typed in L, Kevin. What command do you want? I actually want line. I'm just going to hit enter because that's the first one that comes up. And boom, I'm in the same world. Okay, hit escape, and I'm done. So I've made 2 lines. I've done it 2 ways. One using the quick button, one using the command L. Draw a line. There we go, and escape. So that's how you do that. And that's the point of the command bar. You never have to push a button up here if you don't want to. If you're more comfortable using the commands, use the commands. If you're more comfortable using the buttons, use the buttons. If you learned how I learned, which is commands, you don't even look up here. You just type commands constantly without even looking at your keyboard, excuse me, and you sort of navigate and create your drawing. And I will show you both ways. Okay. Now, so that takes us to the command line. If we just go down one more step, okay, we see it says model, layout 1, and layout 2. That area will become important when we start printing. Okay, so layouts are sort of print layouts. So right now we're in model space, which is infinite digital space. And if we want to go to layout space, I just clicked on layout 1. We are in paper space. So here is a sheet of paper. I have no idea what size it is, and we can set all that up once we get into the printing, but I just want to give you a taste of this. And what we have here, this little guy right there, is called a viewport, which is basically a little window looking into model space. So I'm in paper space right now with a little window looking through the sheet down out into infinite model space. I hope that makes sense. It will become more clear once we get to it. So it's basically like, oh, I have my sheet of paper. I'm going to make a little window on it and look through it to look at the drawing I made. And then I'm going to scale that window so I can look at my drawing at a certain size. 1/8 scale, 1/4 scale, something like that, some sort of architectural scale. So that is the difference between model and layout tabs. To start, model will be your world. This is where you're going to live most of the time, and then we'll get into the printing. Okay, so now in addition to the left-hand side over there with your model layout tabs, I'm going to look over to the right-hand side, and you see a bunch of different features here, okay? So these are just different ways to help us navigate space. So I just want to point out a couple. First off, you see that it says model. That means I'm in model space right now. Okay, so I'm in my infinite dimension model space. I click to layout 1. I look down there again, and now it says paper. That means, hey, Kev, you're in paper space. It just lets you know. Okay, I'm going to go back to model space over here. Likewise, I can click that button over here. Now, if I'm in paper space and I click it, it'll activate the viewport. And now you can see I'm in model space through the viewport. Okay, I'm going to click it back to paper and just go back to model space over here. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that quite yet. You can play around with it if you like. Next button over, display grid on and off. Okay, That's helpful. Snap mode is off. If I turn that on, my mouse will snap to a grid. You see that? How it's snapping around? So I turned that on. I did L for line, hit enter. You can see it snap around. Not always useful. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off. Other tools in here like ortho mode. So if I turn that on, I can only go draw lines in up or down. See, an orthographic projection, meaning I can only draw lines orthographically. Left, right, up, down, perfectly straight, and on the horizontal or vertical. Okay, there's a couple other settings over here that we may or may not turn off. So it's going to turn on, show you one more setting, and that is this guy right here, which is your snaps. So I hit this little down arrow next to this square right down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit that down arrow again. There we go. So all these little check marks are saying, hey, these snaps are on. Okay, so I'm gonna leave those on, and I'm not gonna turn on anything else but endpoint, midpoint, center. Those look pretty good. All right, I'll show you what those are. I'm gonna click in space, and I'm just gonna hit L for line, hit enter, and now it'll snap to midpoints of lines, endpoints of lines. Do you want to start a line here? Do you want to start a line here? Do you want to start a line here? Tells you where to snap to start those. So I'm just going to hit escape again. Now, escape will be your sort of go-to sort of best friend for AutoCAD. It's your get out of whatever it is you're in button. If I'm in a line, L, line, enter, specify first point, it says. So it's like, hey, you told me you want to draw a line. Where do you want to draw a line? I'm done drawing a line. I don't want to draw a line. I did that by a mistake. I'm going to hit escape. I'm out of that command. It's kind of like a weird nervous tick, always hitting the escape button. It's a good way before you go into any commands. All right, hit escape, make sure we're out of everything, and then I'm going to go into a new command. So that sort of takes us through the user interface. Just to review a little bit, we have our application menu here, our QAT here, quick access toolbar. We have our tabs and ribbon here. More often than not, we're living in this home tab this semester. Lots of stuff to learn here. In the home tab alone, you can make beautiful drawings, and this stuff just sort of gets you further and further into some more complex tools and things as you go down the line on these different tabs. These names at the bottom of the ribbon here are the panel names. So this is the draw panel in the home tab on the home ribbon. A good way to say that. Here are two different tabs for different files that I currently have open. So user interface, that's the file we just made. This, of course, is my open two-dimensional space of making a drawing. I have my command line at the bottom, and then I have my home and layout tabs down in the bottom left, which is your, say, model and paper space tabs. That will be more for printing. We'll get into that. That takes some digging. You may be hearing Wendell right now. I apologize. I think the mailman's here. And then we have different options on the right-hand side, and we'll slowly sort of gobble these different tools and things up as we move forward. So I think this is a good spot to stop on the user interface, and the next lecture will be about file setup so that you and I are looking at the same exact environment in CAD. All right, I'll stop it, and I'll see you in a bit.